Welcome to Be Customer-Led, where we'll explore how leading experts in customer and employee experience are navigating organizations through their own journey to be customer-led, and the actions and behaviors employees and businesses exhibit to get there. And now your host, Marbu Brown.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Be Customer-Led. Well, we pride ourselves in bringing to you practical insights and nuggets that you can use to enhance the customer and employee experience journey at your company right away. Today, we'll be speaking with Martin Palamarz, co-founder and chief customer officer at TheyDo.com, a company that helps their clients bring customer-centric design to life by delivering an end-to-end view of customer journeys. Welcome to the program, Martin.
Thank you, Marbo. Thanks for having me so much.
Oh, I am excited about our conversation because we're going to be talking about one of the hottest and most pertinent topics that companies need to master to move the needle for customer experience in their world, and that's customer journeys. And so I'm really looking forward to us delving deep into this. And you know, I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and one of the things you highlight is that you find weaknesses in current systems and you turn them into opportunities. So I'd love it if you get us started by telling us about your career journey and how this led you to become a co-founder and chief customer officer at TheyDo.
Sure. Little did I know back in the days that I would become a co-founder of a SaaS business. Originally, I'm coming from a marketing background. I'm originally from Scandinavia, Sweden. Came into in contact with the internet already in 1994 at the University of I'm studying. So it was really like, wow, what is this? This is amazing. Connecting, at the fingertips, it was fascinating. And fast forward after my studies, I got the privilege to work with very famous Swedish brands through a web agency. So I was working with IKEA, with Volvo cars, etc., etc. So I learned a lot about branding, how to truly deliver a brand that the people aspire towards and cherish and understand. And I had the privilege to working hard and learning by doing. Over 6 years, I was really helping, setting up very sort of relevant campaigns for these brands in Sweden. And I learned about what truly drives a customer to buy a product or a service rather than something else, right? Back then, there was a very, very great question I was asked by one of the chief designers at Volvo cars. He said, what would you like to see in a Volvo 6 years from now? Because that is what the production time was taking. That would make a customer buy a Volvo instead of an Audi or Mercedes. And that is and I was always fascinated about make things people want and help brands to do that. So fast forward, I moved over from Scandinavia to the UK, and from there I sort of got in touch with brands like Nike, Adidas, and I was always helping them to be realistic, relevant, but in a content context from a marketing perspective. And over time, I went way more into rapid prototyping, agile transformation, delivery, and so forth. So I merged the branding experience, but with agile transformation. And that took me on a path to help brands, large enterprise companies, then based out of the Netherlands, like Randstad, for instance, was helping to really understand, okay, how can we act on the voice of the customer, right? How can we organize and structure ourselves to deliver product market fit solutions, service our customers in a better way than our competitors do? And that got me in touch with my co-founder, one of the co-founders, Jochen van der Veer, who is today the CEO. He came from a design background. I came from a strategic business branding background, strategic business transformation. And together, we started to really find a very interesting way of helping these large corporations to break down systems, right? Because it's a systemic issue normally to be able to act on customer data and feedback.
That's right.
So that is the reasons for I'm saying that find weaknesses in systems, because I think the systems always or very often are one of the reasons for why we are not able to scale transformation and be that nimble and efficient operation to truly react on a customer's experience.
Yep, I'm very familiar with that whole concept because back in the day when I ran something at Amazon called the Customer Experience and Encore, we were all about finding systemic issues that were problems for customers and solving them at scale so that we could keep customers from having the same problem over and over. And it sounds like that's some of what drove you. Well, when you think about the customer journey space, what kind of weaknesses were you aiming to solve in that space when you joined forces with Joachim to found TheyDo?
Sure. I mean, it was in 2017 we got this aha moment when we were orchestrating and running sort of Google design sprints, or we call them, at our clients, right, or our customers. And what we realized, there were a few things. Was always this kind of amazing energy and wow moment, aha, enlightenment almost about like, okay, this is what we're going to do next. This is truly what drives loyalty, enhances experience, but also brings business to us as a company, right? But then when the client had left their space and the design sprint was over, everyone went back to their silos again, right? It was like a wet blanket that sort of covered everything because siloism took over. The backlogs were already predefined, almost a year ahead or maybe even more. Budgets were not available. And the question is like, who would even own this solution in the first place? Because it was maybe not ever heard of or thought of, et cetera, et cetera.
And it wasn't necessarily owned by one of the silos. It was kind of like something that cut across the silos.
Exactly. Yeah. Is it a marketing initiative, IT, yeah, support? I mean, where even begin, right? And the CX teams were really empowered to make those strategic choices and decisions, right? So they were great at unpacking and demystifying the truth, but then what? So everyone went back into the PowerPoint slides and were very frustrated. So what we did was we broke the system, we hacked it a bit, and we said, look, what would happen if we would actually invite C-level decision makers into the end presentation of these sessions, and they, because they have obviously the authority, the budget, and the KPIs, right? And what we also learned was that there was a lot of not invented here, or if it's not my idea, then the idea is not good, etc. So it was really, in unofficial interests and so forth were more important than the real ones. So we let the customer themselves, so i.e. our clients' customers present. So they took through the whole process, not only the end result of what the design sprint actually resulted in, but actually how we got to those decisions. So we took them through all the problem statement, the journeys that we had mapped, the persona profiles, the opportunities or the problem statements we had actually identified, all the different potential prototypes that we actually ideated and tried to see would they be a product market fit, yes or no. We also took them through all the ones that we killed and why we actually killed them, and therefore which ideas that went through all the way to become the final idea that should be. And when the client themselves or the customer themselves presented the whole sort of session or week of work, and they said, look, if you customer or brand XYZ implement this, I will be more loyal, I will use your product more, I would choose you in front of your competitors, etc., etc. Something truly magic happened because the head of IT was literally like, okay, let me figure out how to solve this. And 1 or 2 weeks later, that whatever delivery was suddenly on the backlog of XYZ teams across horizontal silos, and they were actually implemented.
Okay, so let me back you up for a second, because there's something you're saying here that maybe I didn't fully understand when you first said it. Are you saying that the actual end customers came in? Okay, got it. Okay, that's novel. That's yeah.
We literally removed all kind of internal frictions and ivory towers and of priorities by actually having a very, very important customer tell to the decision maker that because of this whole process that we actually had, being the Google design sprint, we went through this and we came to this delivery or idea or prototype. Support me in delivering or implementing this solution, I will be more loyal to you, or I will be way more prone to sign more or you versus someone else. And that suddenly sort of mobilized things we have never ever seen before. And that actually triggered us to think of like, what would it look like, or did it require to actually do this over and over again at scale using digital solutions and digital media? And that was the sort of the nucleus to TheyDo.
Mm-hmm.
What we wanted to do is not only to create yet another journey map, and this was just prior to COVID. So little did we know that all these kind of and analog sessions would very rapidly move into digital ones, and
that's right.
Head up everything even more. Because suddenly something that you never would think of that you would do over a link, you actually did, because you couldn't have any other options. You had to simply. Now that became the norm. So now suddenly the wall with the Post-it notes were replaced by the Miro boards, or a meeting room was a Zoom call, right? That just gave us even more, into the fire to actually provide this type of service, because it's not about creating a new interactive dashboard or a whiteboard, but literally empower the voice of the customer and the reasoning from an idea all the way to delivery, how to actually fulfill it, how to track it, how to prioritize it in the right way, and also to mobilize the silos to coordinate and collaborate together to truly solve what matters the most, both from a business perspective, but also from a customer experience perspective.
Yep. So at TheyDo, you guys talk about this in terms of journey management. So what is journey management? Like, how does it differ from other approaches that people are using to drive CX improvements? And I know you've shared some stuff with us already, but go ahead and give us a more full definition of journey management and how it's different from these other approaches.
Sure. First and foremost, what we've learned the hard way is we were talking about journey management already 4 years ago, and few people out there were even understanding what that is. And now it's way more referenced and utilized, and more people really truly understand what it means. Still, it has many different meanings, and there is what is right. It's what the bigger audience or the market actually defines it as. But if you look at what we at TheyDo think of journey management, is literally like, what we do is we orchestrate quant and qual data. It's very, very key that it has to be the qualitative and quantitative information data. So it's performance indicators next to customer experience information. And with the customer, we're talking about anyone, right? It can be the B2B, B2C customer, but it can be also employee experience. We also helping different sort of municipalities and even governments. So it can also be the citizen, right? Mm-hmm. Citizen experience, etc. But those are brought to a context, and the journey is literally a lens or a prism through which you look at your data through a story context, right? And why is this important? Because that is what really lacks in today's business world is context. There is a lot of different sort of dashboard like Power BI or graphs, Tableau, whatever, where decision makers are making decisions against. But really, do they understand the reason behind why a data point is the way it is? Do they actually see the big picture? Do they see the sort of the outside in perspective of how they are performing as a business? And if a metric is done with 5%, do they understand the reasoning behind why that is? Because there can be many different steps prior in the experience or prior in the journey, whatever that journey is, that is actually impacting on that business performance, right? Now, what the journey does is actually brings that clarity and that overview on any type of level of horizon. It can be end-to-end, as we discussed previously, but it can be very, very narrow, granular about like, how are we performing on a specific touch for a marketing campaign or whatever it might be. But what the journey does is literally it gives you not only the story, but also it shows you the frequency of where what happens. It shows you also the distance from different events. So how far is the step from saying, I am deciding to go to say, I don't know, hire a bank for a mortgage, all the way to that I am a happy mortgage customer and everything is settled. Is it three interactions, 3 meetings, or is it 25? Who am I talking to? What tools am I using? Where am I frustrated? Where am I more or less stepping out of the process and so forth? And I think the journey is therefore so powerful to bring that information to the forefront, both from and actually you do not have to be a data scientist to understand the big picture or the really nitty-gritty of things. You do not have to be a researcher to see the story behind it, right? And now where we can highlight the data and filter data on what is relevant for me being the spectator, maybe head of marketing or CX director or researcher or maybe the CEO, I can sort of orchestrate the journey or the journeys to tell me the story from what I find interesting, what I need to know about whatever context. And there is no other tool that is able to do that. And we're not talking about tool being then Journeys. I think Journeys is therefore a superior vehicle to bring that to the forefront. And that's why we use the vehicle of Journeys, which is a service design product system. And now we have brought that into orchestrating and running a whole business. So we believe with journey management is literally like you're managing a company, a project, a product market launch, whatever it might be, through journeys, right? So it's not like you're managing journeys. No, you're managing something through journeys, with journeys. So when you have the data available and you have the scope mapped out, so really why am I performing the way I am as a business, and who is involved and what is the complexity and what should I do about it if it doesn't work? I am empowered to actually solve any type of pains and problems that I'm facing as a business or a decision maker. So that is what we define as journey management.
As you're talking about this, I just had a flashback. I used to work at, Cisco Systems years ago, and we were at that time trying to get into the consumer business. We had a certain type of router that we wanted to sell. And so one weekend, all the execs got homework. They got to take that router home, and they got to take a consumer router home. And their homework was to configure both of them to work at home. And so after the weekend, it was very clear that the router that we were trying to sell to consumers was not working for consumers because they understood what the journey was to be able to configure that router. And it was just, that made it very clear to them. And that's tapping into a journey of maybe a slightly different kind of way. Yeah. But the point that you're making there, I see it's so great that when people understand what the journey is that the customer has to go through to accomplish a certain objective, right? Because anytime a customer touches a company, they have an objective in mind. And if they're not able to accomplish that objective, then whatever processes, systems, combination of the two, they've failed. And that, of course, is the journey that the customer goes through to get there. So when you think about journey management, how has it helped companies to achieve their CX goals in places where other approaches just haven't been as effective? Can you think of some examples where you all have been able to help a company like break through, crack the code for something that maybe other methods had not helped them to do before?
Definitely. Look, we are helping a lot of large enterprise brands, right, worldwide, across any type of industries, right? We're especially strong in fintech or banking and healthcare. So for instance, without mentioning any specific names, right?
Yeah.
Examples of what can a client or customer try to achieve. First of all, almost everyone comes to us and says, I need to get some type of clarity of what all our call data actually does or says, because it's fragmented, it's lying all over the place, and we make any kind of sense out of it, right? And we can't even, they are hitting the glass ceiling very, very quickly, and they cannot penetrate because it becomes overwhelming, too complex to navigate and make decisions around, because everyone has, unstructured data lying around in different type of formats, different type of tooling. They don't follow the same sort of taxonomy or way of working definitions and so forth. So we try to consolidate that, right? Now, say you have that data in place. So for instance, what are they trying to look at? So if we took a pharma company, for example, they look at, for instance, patient bookings of a medical exam, for instance, or doctor's appointments. So what they have noticed is that different type of demographics have different type of cancellation patterns, right? So for instance, you have highly educated versus lower educated, or different genders or different ethnic groups and so forth have different patterns. And they don't understand why. What's behind these different sort of behaviors and so forth. So what they have done is, for instance, they can then ingest a lot of different type of data using integrations. And they can run large amount of, for instance, customer calls or booking calls or look at different sources from how our clients or patients booking appointments. And they can start to see differences because they also can connect business performance indicators, for instance, the cancellation rates and time from moment of the call that was made all the way to appointment, etc. So see if time is an impact and so forth. And they bring all those type of data points into the query, in this case, cancellation rates. And what they realized was, for instance, that if a customer is actually calling in, they have a much higher, they show up much more frequently than those who just make, for instance, a booking online. Because through actually deep interviews that you feel way more engaged and committed to an appointment that you have actually made with a human, that you actually more sort of committed and you have made almost a promise. So therefore I show up, even if something maybe is maybe should I go or shouldn't, then I should always wins over shouldn't, which that you would never ever figure out if you would just run big data against this type of scenarios, because you have never gone deeper and asked the question, why do you actually do what you do, and why do you act this way in different type of contexts? So what we did was we learned, for instance, together with the client, is that because of different sort of ways of facilitating and channeling different sort of patients from different sort of genders and ethical backgrounds and so forth, you can actually increase the rates of how frequently people are showing up. And every single 1% is a huge impact when you start to talk about hundreds and thousands and millions of patients, right?
That's right.
Another customer that we had was they really realized that they had a huge amount of customer support calls related to a credit card issue. But they didn't really understand the reason behind those issues before they really went down and started to run different journeys and patterns and so forth. And they realized that with some different adjustments, that support would never, ever be able to resolve. They went to the root cause of the problem rather than fix the symptoms. Were able to actually eliminate 25% of all support calls related to a credit card issue across the whole year, which led to several millions of business impact improvement in the sense of, like, the customer was more satisfied, they were able to get their jobs done, they didn't have so many customer support calls that they didn't have to take care of, etc., etc. So business impact. And I think that is something that we are really, very, very, I would say, passionate and drive a lot, is that we are not only here to provide you CX improvement, i.e. NPS, CSAT, CS, and so forth, but literally go and say, how can we directly connect your call and quant data to the business improvement and business impact? And we really tied your whatever decisions you make and implementations you commit to, we can tie that back into business performance indicators that we ingest directly into our journeys. So you also see that in a contextual way, and you can black and white very, very clearly start to see, because we decided to do X, Y, Z, we now delivered this improvement for us as a business, but also improve the experience for our customers.
Interesting. So out of you gave some great examples just now. I'm wondering, what do you think is the most surprising lesson that you all have learned about moving the needle for CX improvement since you launched TheyDo?
I mean, we went through a few of insights or aha moments for a while, but I think something that really still sticks and something we are really actively, I would say, driving and trying to figure out how to solve is that, especially in today's rapid changing environments where everyone save money or be more efficient, etc., the CX world is always secondary. And the business performance world and indicators and metrics are always winning the battle if you have to choose one or the other. If the CX team comes and says, hey, but what about customer experience? This is so important. If we deliver an experience that the customer prefers, we will always come out as the winning preferred option. That on its own is not strong enough. You really, as a CX team, need to be able to show, like, how can I, with whatever effort I'm going to invest in this, deliver business impact that talks to finance, that talks to IT, that talks to procurement, that talks to business-driven decisions that C-level normally responds to and presents and works with, right? And I think linking those together is something that is not always a straightforward process and something that is common for CX to do and practice. And learn the hard way. We said like, look, if we come with arguments about like, look, it's black and white, it's night and day. If you do this, your customer will have a better NPS experience and what have you. Still, if you compare it with, okay, what does that mean for churn? And you can't hit that directly, it will always be a secondary option rather than a primary option to pursue.
Okay. So basically what you're saying is people have got to connect this to dollars and cents, and in a lot of ways they've got to connect it to the things that, you know, shareholders care about or the CFO cares about and those folks. Well, I'm sure this is one of the big challenges that companies face when they're trying to become truly customer-centric. But in your view, what are some of those biggest challenges that organizations have to deal with if they're trying to move the needle and become more customer-centric?
It's a great question. And you're not the first one asking that question. I think there are a lot out there asking that question. I truly believe that what it comes down to is that businesses are built around, you know, silos or delivery teams, experts in their field. Like marketing is doing their thing, IT theirs, and support theirs, and so forth. Right? Silos. We call it silos. Larger the corporation, the larger the complexity, and the bigger the silos actually are present. So what we're doing is, I believe you need to be able to connect the silos with each other, right? So we see a lot of insight management or insight AI tools that are bringing, you know, insights to life and therefore solutions based on those insights. But those insights are normally very often still coming from an inside-out perspective or defined by the marketing team that is making marketing research, or the support team that is looking at how can we enhance customer support or you know, minimize waiting time from, say, 5 minutes to 4.5 minutes, right? What it comes down to is that you look at your world from your brief, from your KPI, from your perspective, and you have your own sort of persona profile or you know, pain profile that you try to untangle and preferably solve. When you look at the world, you said it yourself, and that's why the journey is so powerful. Is literally like, as a customer, we are engaging with so many different type of verticals, silos, all them across my jobs to be done journey, right? Whatever that might be. Right. And to coordinate and correlate, you know, how we are, you know, solving and delivering the most efficient processes, the most best potential experiences require that many different sort of verticals that normally don't collaborate or not even aware of what they are doing, what type of data they have, what type of processes they have, what type of decisions and KPIs, budgets, whatever they have, not even to mention technical depth, how they collaborate as one to solve that horizontal experience and horizontal problem, because one problem pain normally isn't just vertical. It normally always touches across different sort of silos, right? And I think the biggest challenge for a large enterprise or even smaller companies is literally how are we delivering, you know, the horizontal improvement across of touch points and priorities, budgets, whatever it might be. So we are together solving what matters the most. And I think that is what TheyDo does. It really brings that to the forefront. And we are not removing silos. We're not, you know, breaking down silos, but we're connecting them. So we're saying you're working in the way you always have been working, but because you all prioritize the same specific pain point and how to solve that pain point in the best possible way, from your perspective as an expert, being the marketing expert, the IT expert, or the support expert, collaborating through what matters the most, you are therefore, you know, way more efficient. You're therefore, you know, aligned on how are we actually tracking this pain in the first place and solving it, and therefore you're able to deliver that experience that is superior to your competitors.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think sometimes as companies grow, they almost forget that the unifying principle is the customer, right? I mean, like the reason they had any kind of success to begin with was because they solved a problem for a customer, or they solve a set of problems for a set of customers, right? But then it's almost like they get to this point where they feel like, if I'm great at the part that I'm doing, somehow this all comes together. But if I lose the focus of that unifying principle, then I can be great at what I do. Marketing can be great at what it does, and IT can be great at what it does, and all these other functions can be great at what they do, but they don't necessarily wind up creating something that's integrated in a way that it works for the customer, which is supposed to be that unifying principle. So when you think in terms of, you mentioned this whole notion of it coming down to sort of like dollars and cents, but when you think about key performance indicators to measure the impact of journey management on business outcomes, I mean, are there some that you all particularly focus on?
This is a very good question, by the way. So yes, definitely. It depends entirely what pain we are trying to focus on. Prior to, I would say, a year or two ago, one of the most common ways of working with journeys and journey management was like map everything as much as possible, like end-to-end journeys, like get the customer experience and try to get some sense out of what is actually going on and why. Where are we performing well? Where are we not performing well? Based on for instance, NPS, CSAT, CS, and so forth. I wrote an article not long a time ago, and I'm getting more and more reference for it, is sort of the journey theater, I'm calling it, right? So you're in kind of endless discovery mode because there is no kind of defined target of what are we actually solving here. Mm-hmm. Discovery itself becomes the end result. And that then you will not deliver anything, right?
That's right.
So what are you trying to achieve here? And that is something that we always begin our conversations with our customers. Like, why are you here? What is the business pain that you are trying to solve? And funny enough, that business pain is not always a CX pain. It can be an internal efficiency issue. So we're also often treating the customer being the internal teams. So how can we make your internal process more efficient? What is the redundancy? Where are you wasting a lot of time? How can we make you more efficient? So how, time to value, time to market could be a great example of such an efficiency improvement, right? So removing friction of whatever that friction could be. Another very big impact is churn. We're working on a lot of churn. Yeah. We are churning more, X% more in this specific market than another market. Why is that, right? Or things have changed and now we operate in a much more sort of red ocean market where everything is commoditized. That how can we stand out and deliver a better offer and service so we are not churning? What can we do to do that? Mm-hmm. So also growth indicators, so improving market share. Now I'm talking about fairly large metrics, but those can of course be broken down, right? So growth can also be, or efficiency can be drilled down into a bounce rate on a website or an order form, right? And everything in a TheyDo journey is interlinked. So you can go from a very, very high level metric down to very level of granularity that sort of is coordinated both from a quality perspective. And you can say, because of this conversion rate has this effect on our EBITDA in XYZ ways, right? Mm-hmm. And we why that is and what you should do about it. Of course, product market fit is another one. Is are we actually delivering what the customer needs and wants? Are we internally also delivering systems and content that actually people engage with and actually see useful? Claims journeys is something we are very, very often come up with, and removing claims. So that's measurements, right? So what I'm trying to give you examples of is like we are rarely looking at NPS, CS only like normally does, but really going into business indicators. And not talking too much about data, but today we can also integrate that data directly into a journey. So we can take, for instance, any type of data that is in Snowflake or BigQuery, etc., and we can see that live in a journey context. So we can actually see how are you performing day on day, and see if you're introducing a solution based on your research, does that have actually impact on your business performance? So you can become sort of a business dashboard. So you truly see that as well, which is truly unique.
Great. So what's next for are there any initiatives you're particularly excited about that are coming up?
Oh, for sure. I think, look, anyone, I would say, out there today is obviously working with AI or figuring out what AI can do for them as well. And one thing that we saw is that working with qualitative data and journeys has always been a fairly cumbersome process that has taken a lot of time and was fairly sort of heavy on resources, and excited also fairly good experience in handling qual data. That is
kind of labor intensive to some extent.
Making a complex, good research journey is a matter of previously of months. Definitely. Look, we're not replacing researchers. We're not saying that AI is a magic wand that just you can whisk around and you get the same type of quality, but very, very close to. And today, we can ingest gigabytes of data and mine that data in any type of context and even create journeys from scratch. We can empower and refine journeys and show how they are progressing and evolving over time using AI. And that is something you can do in minutes. So if you have, for instance, your whole support log or Qualtrics survey, etc., you can just ingest that directly in TheyDo, and you can say, in the context of, again, let's use the claim experience. How are we performing in the context of, credit card issues? And you can literally mine that data and within an instant get prioritized insights based on frequency, level of how much people have been frustrated about mentioning a specific impact or experience, either positive. We can really grade it, and we can highlight what truly matters between one versus another mention, and we can correlate all that stuff together and bring that to the forefront. What else we can do is we can take all very granular level of detailed data, and we can sort of trickle that up into a summary for executives across your product experience. This is what matters the most based on thousands of reports, surveys, interviews, whatever you like, right? And this is what you should pay attention to because of X, Y, Z. So we're doing that already. But what we're going to go forward with AI is that you can literally chat with your data. You can make the data come to life in a way that never was seen before. And unstructured data becomes suddenly structured, and you can truly treat qual data the way you treat quant today and beyond, right? And that way we become truly from implementation to delivering value. Previously, that was taking some time with integrations, with mapping the journeys, with and all that stuff. We can deliver value already. The first week we collaborate with an enterprise customer. If the enterprise customer already has their data figured out and have the integrations available. So the time to value is shrinking exponentially as well. And this is just the beginning. We have so many different integration efforts coming. So all type of data is going to be available in a journey context. We are going to be able to report on data in a sense of also that executives can make sense out of it rather than just the researchers and the traditional service designers, right, that are used to work with journeys. So it truly becomes a must-have platform rather than nice-to-have service design aid.
It's so interesting because I sometimes talk about problems that have been intractable for a long time that AI is helping us to solve. And this whole issue of dealing with unstructured data or even being able to synthesize data from disparate data sources is one of the places that AI excels. And it seems like you guys are tapping into that very strongly. So that's pretty exciting. So
how we differentiate ourselves from enterprises like ChatGPT and so forth is that you always will have the sort of the logic chain from your query all the way to the end result, or even all the steps. Remember that discussion I was talking about, that the customer was talking about the whole process of the Google design sprints, right? Mm-hmm. How we got to the decision we really need to make. And that is going to be still true for TheyDo for always and always. It's literally like you can always correlate everything through the whole sort of step by step to how did we get here. Mm-hmm. If you query something today with an LLM, you get great answers, but can I trust it? How did you come to the conclusion you actually came to, right? Do I even have access to the right data sets? Also, as we're performing from business performance perspective and so forth, rather than using open source intelligence on the internet, right? So
yeah,
truly give you the both quant and qual proof of what you should do next and why you should do it as well. Right.
Yep. So having that chain or You can have proprietary LLMs that are trained on internal data to be able to make those connections. Well, we're just about out of time, but let me ask you, after all these different things we've been discussing, tell me, is there something you'd like to see me ask my next guest?
Well, look, I have no clue who your next guest will be, what that person does. But I really like to ask always the question to when I'm trying to find great talent. I always ask, like, if you couldn't do what you do today, what would you do and why?
Okay, I like that question. That's a very nice one. Well, Martin, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and I know I've certainly learned a whole lot, and I believe that all the people who are listening to this, they would have learned a whole lot by the time they get done listening to our conversation. So I'm excited about it, and they'll be able to pick up some things that they can go and use right away. So thank you for joining us. And people want to follow up with you and continue the conversation. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Look, not to promote us in any kind of way, but we as TheyDo are a company with an open mindset and want to share, right? So always out. If you have any questions, there are never bad questions. We're always interested and curious. So we're there to share best practices. So of course, as we are here on this podcast, we stand together with Forrester on Forrester events and sharing best practices together with our clients and so forth. But can be also one-on-one questions. So LinkedIn, Martin Palamarz. There is only one of those in the whole world. So feel free to reach out that way. Or martin@theydo.com is another one. Very simple, straightforward on email. But do also come to TheyDo and try it out. If you're interested and curious about how it works, we are more than happy to, without any kind of commit, guide you through and show you what it could look like, specifically designed to you and your needs. So we have also a lot of content and blogs and so forth around journey management and best practices. We actually host our own sort of sources like podcasts and so forth where we share best practices. So yeah, listen in, share, and join us.
Cool. Well, again, many thanks. It's been great talking with you, and we will look forward to continuing the conversation and hope many of the listeners do as well. Well, that's a wrap for today, and thank you everyone for listening, and tune in for the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Be Customer Led with Marbu Brown. We are grateful to our audience for the gift of their time. Be sure to visit us at becustomerled.com for more episodes. Leave us feedback on how we're doing or tell us what you want to hear more about. Until next time, we're out.